President Biden tonight holding his first solo news conference in 8 months. His campaign seeking to reassure Americans that President will stay in and win the 2024 race. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good evening. What are the stakes of Biden's press conference today?
Good evening to you, Jack. So tonight's press conference is key to President Biden's re-election bid. And ahead of the high-stakes press conference tonight, President Biden today at the NATO summit met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as he announced a new $200 million package of weapons for Ukraine. Watch.
We've imposed significant cost on Russia, and you made it clear Russia will not prevail in Ukraine, will not prevail in Ukraine. Ukraine will prevail. And I want you to know we're going to be with you every step of the way.
And now all eyes are on President Biden's first solo press conference in over 8 months. That's happening tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we do expect President Biden to face questions on both domestic and foreign topics, including, for example, his re-election bid and the challenges surrounding his campaign. Today, officials with the administration and the Biden campaign met with some Democratic senators. And some senators after the meeting said they're still firmly standing with President Biden, while some others say they want the Biden campaign to quell more concerns. Watch.
Some of my concerns are allayed. Some others have been deepened. I need more of the kind of analytics that show the path to success. Tonight will be important.
Meanwhile, a White House advisor says he's not aware of any foreign leaders expressing to President Biden directly any concerns about the political situation in the U.S. And meanwhile, the new British Prime Minister today also said that he's seen President Biden in, quote, really good form at their meeting on Wednesday. But now we're going to see President Biden directly confronting many of these questions about his campaign in less than 2 hours, and we do expect to hear more clearly about the president's path forward. Back to you.
Iris, thank you. We'll keep our eyes on that press conference. Now, tensions in Europe are rising as the NATO summit concludes. The U.S. plans to deploy long-range missiles in Germany. Some G7 members are partially getting involved in the plan, which Russia already says it came out and wants to counter. NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pazdar, has the story.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with G7 foreign ministers at the sidelines of the NATO summit on Thursday.
Not only celebrating 75 years of the alliance, but in particular, putting the alliance in strong shape for the next 75 years.
Blinken praised how the G7 works together on issues like Russia and conflicts in the Middle East.
G7 strongly complements the work that's being done here at NATO.
This comes as 3 G7 members, France, Germany and Italy, together with Poland, agreed to develop long-range missiles. That's just one day after NATO announced that the U.S. will deploy long-range missiles in Germany.
I believe we've taken some bold steps in the last few days and weeks. We will take more bold steps in the days and weeks to come.
The U.S. says the deployment of the weapons is an effort to demonstrate its commitment to NATO and European defense. At the summit on Thursday, Germany's chancellor commented on the decision.
Which I think is a very good decision. And it fits into all the decisions we already took.
Russia, meanwhile, says they don't approve of NATO's plan.
This is aimed against us, of course. We must be aware of this. The aggressive course of the United States and NATO is not changing, but we cannot be intimidated. We'll find a response.
The Kremlin claimed NATO's goal is to maintain confrontation in the area, saying tensions in Europe are escalating as a result. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Today, thousands of spiritual believers gather in Washington, D.C. to call an end to the Chinese Communist Party's persecution against the spiritual practice Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa. This year marks the 25th anniversary. NTD's Sam Wong has more.
It's been nearly 25 years since the Chinese Communist Party launched its nationwide persecution against Falun Gong. Here in the nation's capital, thousands of practitioners from all over the world are rallying to call for an end to this ongoing repression. Holding banners and wearing bright yellow T-shirts, Falun Gong practitioners remain undeterred by the sweltering heat wave in Washington, D.C. Along Pennsylvania Avenue, thousands marched down the street, stretching banners that write, "The world needs truthfulness, compassion, forbearance."
My husband was killed. Simply he went to Beijing to hand a letter. On the letter said, Falun Gong is good.
My childhood wasn't exactly easy. because my parents have been multiple times arrested due to their efforts to tell people the truth about the persecution.
Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a traditional Chinese spiritual practice based on the core teachings of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Since its public introduction in 1992, Falun Gong's popularity surged, with an estimated 70 to 100 million people practicing in China. But things changed on July 20th, 1999. Practitioners found themselves the target of a nationwide persecution campaign. The Chinese Communist Party mobilized its entire state apparatus to target the millions of people who they saw as a threat to its authoritarian control.
Look back 25 years ago when the horrific persecution of the Falun Gong started. That is really what revealed the nature of the regime. Falun Gong has been the canary in the coal mine. How they've been persecuted is a signal of future persecution.
Millions of Falun Gong practitioners in China have been detained, tortured, and even killed for practicing their faith. State Department reports suggest an untold number of them were murdered on demand to supply the regime's organ transplant market.
It is the most egregious and disgusting violation of a human and their dignity and their values to commit this systematic organ harvesting that is well documented. Congress has agreed and recognized in a bipartisan way that this is happening and that we stand against it.
Despite the CCP's efforts to stifle the spiritual discipline, Falun Gong is now flourishing globally, with people from all walks of life practicing it in over 100 countries. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Sam Wang, NTD News.
As we approach the 25th anniversary of the Chinese regime's persecution of Falun Dafa, what can be done to bring this campaign to an end? Joining me is former Congresswoman and member of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, Vicky Hartzler. Former Congresswoman and Commissioner Vicky Hartzler, thank you very much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, what message do you have for Falun Gong practitioners who persist peacefully resisting the persecution despite facing backlash from the Chinese Communist Party for the past 25 years?
Well, as a member of Congress earlier and now as a member of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, I want everyone to know that we stand with the practitioners of Falun Gong. They have a right to exercise their faith and their belief according to their deeply held conscience. And it is wrong of China or any other government to try to repress that. And so we stand firmly behind them.
What's the significance of freedom of belief in fostering a healthy society?
Well, in over 25 years that you serve for, which is the abbreviation for the Commission on International Religious Freedom, but how our work, we've seen a direct correlation between the freedom of religion and the overall success and happiness of society. Where there is more religious freedom and the government supports that, we see greater economic benefits for them, more stability in the country, greater happiness all the way around. So it's not only good for a government to do that, to support that because of the people and their own personal beliefs, but because it's good for society as a whole.
Now, zeroing in now on the persecution of Falun Gong, what are your thoughts on the documented instances of live forced organ harvesting by the Chinese regime against practitioners of Falun Dafa? And how do you perceive the persistence of such a crime over the years?
Well, it's horrific. It is unbelievable. It's barbaric that in today's world you would have a government doing that. It's just tears your heart out. And USERF opposes that in the strongest terms. We believe our own government here in the United States could do even more to try to stop this because this is just unthinkable that this is occurring.
What more could be done?
Well, I think in the diplomatic relations that we have with China, I think our government officials could be more vocal with them and perhaps have more economic sanctions on them for doing this, because this is against not just a person's dignity, but against international law. And Falun Gong and all people of all religions have a right, according to international law, to exercise their religion according to their deeply held beliefs, and no government should interfere with that. And certainly they shouldn't be harvesting organs or imprisoning or killing individuals just because of their faith.
Do you have a personal story or a deeply touching story that you can share with us on this?
Well, when I was a state representative in Missouri, which was about 30 years ago, I had the chance to travel to China as part of a leadership exchange program. And I had mixed feelings about going there, honestly, because I had heard about so many of the abuses taking place by their government. But I thought it might be an opportunity to speak up for people. So in almost every government meeting that I was in, I would ask about whether people had freedom of religion, and what the government was doing to either help support that or suppress that. And it was very frustrating because the government leaders would just speak on in circles and would not answer my questions directly, and many times would say, "Oh, we have freedom of religion here. Don't you see the churches?" And of course, we know there's just a minimum number of churches allowed, and that the government has to, people have to give approval from the government to have that. And that's why there are many underground churches and people not getting the government's permission. So my heart went out to the people there, and I came home even more inspired to do what I could to help them, but also to appreciate the freedoms we have here in the United States to go to church or to practice our faith in whatever way we feel led to do so. And here in America, we shouldn't just take it for granted. We should protect those freedoms here, but we should also use the freedoms we have to speak up for those around the world who don't have that ability. And so I hope all of us will join together to support the Falun Gong and their rights, but also all religions across the world, and to push back on governments like the Chinese Communist Party who want to repress that and to hurt our fellow human beings.
Former Congresswoman and Commissioner Vicky Hartzler, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your insight here today.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.